Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Malie, and today I'm going to go over a couple of different things. First one, as you notice, we're back in my grow room. There's been a few changes, and I wanted to kind of update you on what we're going to be doing in here this year. I've got several different plans. Second thing I wanted to do is kind of go and show you the disappointment I had with some of my plants outside, some bulbs that I was really excited to show you next spring. You know, I've been really careful in planting them, planted them in drifts and in matching colors and everything, and that's gotten a little bit messed up. Let's take you outside first and show you what happened. Here we are outside in the front yard of my property, and first of all, I wanted to say that this is not going to be a bash against utility companies. All utility companies have to do their jobs, and part of their jobs is bringing necessary utilities to our properties. And every property has a utility easement around it, and I knew that. And, you know, everybody knows that. Well, maybe not everybody, but everybody plants plants around the edges of their properties despite the utility easements. Now, I had planted several plants around the edges of my property, and some more towards the interior of my property. I try to keep the plants that I'm not as attached to on the edges for many different reasons. There's dogs and kids and utilities. So this last fall, just a few weeks ago, I planted a huge amount of gorgeous bulbs around the edges of my property, and I was really excited to show you them in the spring. I planted them in drifts, I planted them in matching colors. It was going to be a glorious display. Well, unfortunately, I had large areas of bare earth around my property, and we had a utility company that was putting in new utilities come through, saw the bare earth, saw a perfect opportunity to dig their trenches, and dug up almost every single area where I had planted bulbs. And I didn't really get notification they were coming to my property to do that. I knew they were going to be in the neighborhood. But to be honest, all I saw coming up to our neighborhood, because they're doing our whole city, was digging up sidewalk patches or digging in the lawn one, little hole per property. So I didn't think a lot about it because I have plenty of dead lawn for them to dig in. Well, they dug probably, I think there was, let me count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, no less than 6 trenches, maybe, no, 7 trenches. Probably some of them were 5 feet long and 3 feet wide. And they dug up my bulbs. So let me show you where the areas were that they dug. They actually dug into my property on some of it. So let's show you what was taken. So here's the utility box right here. Perfect place to put it, no plants around it. But for some reason they pulled out my mailbox, which is not a big issue because it went back in just nicely. Needs to be replaced, it's kind of old and gross. They dug up my lavender. That I'm not as worried about. I'm just gonna have to keep it watered all winter. They were very careful how they dug out the lavender. Lots of soil around the roots, and moved them back while they dug the trench. But you could kind of see where the wet area is, how far back the trench went. Hopefully my Daphne didn't suffer too much. That was as big as the trench was right there. And it went down 3 to 4 feet. They were almost chest deep in it. So they replanted my lavenders. I had to dig them out and move them a little bit because they weren't exactly where I wanted them. But hopefully these survive. There were several bulbs in this area that got dug out. And I don't think I did find a few of them tossed into the center of the bed. We put them in a plastic bag. I had a really gorgeous plan for this area. A lot of bulbs in very specific ways of putting them. They all got dug out, and I put some of the bulbs that I found tossed into the middle back in here, but we'll see what kind of display it ends up being. And then they dug the trench all the way to this point, all the way back to my butterfly bush. So that was into my driveway area. There were some bulbs in here, but not as many, so I wasn't as worried about this part. They dug this corner right here, which is absolutely fine. I did have to unbury my water box because that was halfway buried. It looks like they might have dug through here too. I think they did dig through here, which is not an issue. I'm not sure, maybe they didn't dig in this area. I can't tell. I wouldn't have cared about this area. But then they go over here, dug up this entire area, and this clump of bulbs was meant to match the clump of bulbs on the opposite side over there. So that was going to be gorgeous. I think every single bulb here is gone. I did use some of the bulbs that I scavenged that were around the property, and some of the ones that, after I talked to them, they were able to recover. There are some bulbs in here but I don't know which ones they are, and there's probably about 5 or 6 other than the 20 in the clump. They dug out this area here. They said they found some bulbs and replanted them, but I don't know if that's really actually going to happen. This was a really full area. This was another area where I planted a ton of bulbs. I think there was 4 clumps or 5 clumps of 10 bulbs each, all in a pattern and with a great color plan. I don't know if any of those were recovered. They dug in here, same thing. Actually, I think this area may not have been dug in. I'm not sure. Actually, this area probably wasn't dug in. But they dug up this entire area, which was full of bulbs. And then comes the sad part. They dug this area up all the way almost to that shrub over there, my 9 bark. So they dug back into my property. They cut back my hardy hibiscus. In my last video that I talked about this hibiscus, when I was showcasing it, I accidentally said it was a blue satin. This is not a blue satin. This is a blue brulee, summer spice hardy hibiscus. Almost irreplaceable. I could probably find another one next year, but I'm not sure. Everywhere I looked, they don't have them. They cut it back, which they didn't dig it up, but they had piled a bunch of stuff on top of it. And when you cut back hardy hibiscus, there's a risk that the stems can go hollow and then get water in them, and that will expand and ruin the roots. So I'm hoping that this will be okay. We'll keep an eye on it for next year. But they did completely get rid of my bush cherry. Now, it was either a Carmine Jewel or a Juliet. I think I'm going to replace it with a Juliet. I don't know how that got missed, and it was completely torn out and tossed to the side and almost unrecognizable. So I lost that. But what they did do nicely is they dug out very carefully and put aside and replanted my daylily, which I was going to get rid of anyway. So that is what was ruined. It's really sad, but then again, like I said, it was something. They were doing their job. They had to do their job. There were empty areas of dirt. They didn't know there were bulbs in there, so it was not, a malicious thing for them to do. It was just them doing their jobs. And now for the good part of the report. I did find their supervisor. She was sitting in a car watching everybody. And so I went and talked to her and let her know, how important those plants were to me, and that, they were, some of them, at least one of them is irreplaceable if it doesn't come back. And she was very concerned. She talked to the crew, asked them to recover any bulbs that they could find. They did replant them rather than give them to me, which, I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But they did try. And she said that she will replace any of the plants that don't come back. And she gave me all the contact information that I need to be able to get reimbursed for the plants that I lost. So anyway, that was the sadness for this last week. But let's go on to what my plans are in the grow room. We are back in my grow room, and I have a lot of exciting plans for here. So let me show you how I've set it up first. So the first thing that I've done is I purchased another set of shelves and some more lights. And this time I actually decided to go with the Walmart shop lights that I had purchased last time. Those seem to put out the most light. Now these are 6,000 Kelvin and 6,000 lumens each, and they give quite a bit of light. So I'm really excited about those. I have my old setup here with the shop lights that I purchased off Amazon. Those are a lot cheaper, but they don't seem to give out as much light, but they were actually really sufficient for what I was growing last year. As you can see, I've got my seedling trays out and ready, and I'll go over what I'm going to do with those. And I've actually really loved these seed growing blocks. These are from Epic Gardener. They've got slits in the bottom, big holes. I think I've showcased these once or twice when I was transplanting seedlings. But they've got the big hole in the bottom that makes it really easy to remove the seeds. You don't get girdling roots because of the air holes in it. And they're really sturdy, just really, really sturdy, so you can use them over and over. They are extremely expensive though. I bought a set of 24. I think that was $56, but I will never have to replace these again unless I stomp on them or lose them. I'm actually thinking about possibly getting some more. We'll see how that goes. But this makes 144 seedlings, so that really is truly should be plenty for what I'm doing. And then we've got some more seed pots that I purchased off Amazon that are reusable, but I do have to say you've got to be kind of careful. If you notice this one, maybe you can see it a little bit, is a little distorted. It's because after I took the seedlings out of them, I left them outside in the sun, and they do warp if you do that, but they're still usable. We've got our self-watering tray set up, so I'm ready to start seedlings. I've got to just wash out the pots first. So this is ready. We'll go over that. We've got my citrus set up. I'm planning on getting 1 or 2 more citrus as soon as they're in stock. This is my Owari Satsuma. This is my Eureka Lemon. I bought these early this spring, and I already have a lemon that is beginning to ripen down there. And some more babies, as you can see. Now this tree defoliated when it came back inside and isn't looking very happy, except for we're getting a lot of new growth. So that's really exciting. I'm not noticing any new growth on this one, so we'll see, but it looks healthy. It's got great color, so we'll see what happens with it. And then we've got my kind of anemic looking, not anemic as in iron deficient, but kind of weak looking avocado. It's healthy, it's still growing. I haven't lost any leaves. I don't see any new growth buds, but we're gonna keep researching and figure out how best to grow these and see if we can get it to fruit indoors. This is a Mexicola avocado. These are the Sansei grow lights that are great for flowering plants and fruit, and they're not that awful pink color. And I've really liked those. Those seem to give out plenty of light for these. This is the second setup for my other 2 citrus trees that are coming, but I've also got my ginger. Now the ginger I started last April, and I've been researching it more, and it looks like maybe I was giving it too much light underneath the grow lights. It likes a little more shaded area. So I've moved it out of the direct light and into more indirect light. Plus, I'm wondering if the calcium in our water is burning the leaves. But it's finally starting to put on some decent growth. I've read that it takes 8 to 10 months before you can harvest. So I'm hoping for a harvest sometime next spring. Over here we've got a couple more plants. My aloe vera is looking great. We potted it up into a new pot just recently, so I'm hoping that it doesn't die, but we've got several different babies that are growing off of it. And then this is one of the things that I am going to be learning to do in this grow room. I just took some cuttings before the first frost hit and just stuck them in a pot. And they all rooted. And if you notice, these are new flower buds. I don't think it's getting enough nutrients and light to actually flower, because as you can see, the previous flower buds are starting to dry up and fall off. But we've got new growth, they're extremely healthy, so I'm going to learn some more about propagating, because that's a lot of fun. I'm definitely not a person who's into houseplants. Never have been, never been able to make them grow, but this plant was given to me on my last day of being an accountant, and I've decided maybe now's the time to try and learn to grow houseplants. So we're going to start separating these out. Learn what they are, figure out how to take care of them, because now we've got an area to grow them. So we'll see. I don't think I'm going to be completely into growing houseplants, but at least we'll see if we can get these to survive. We'll probably separate them out too. Then up here is another trial that didn't go as well as the roselle cuttings. These are cuttings from my maypop. They are not doing really well. So we'll kind of do some more research and figure out what's wrong with these. This is my original grow table, so I do have more room with my little fan on there. Not a ton of room, and the lights aren't great. These are the Fairy Morris lights that came from a Fairy Morris kit, and I set this up when I first started growing seedlings indoors, and it actually worked really well. So this is another area where I can raise and lower the lights to grow things. There are quite a few different things that I want to do this winter. The first one is going to go along with growing the food that I eat. Now, I have some new dietary restrictions. I've been trying to grow a lot of what I eat. That worked really well last summer and even into the fall. I have a lot of food that I preserve that I'm eating, and I do have some hoop houses that I'm growing in, and they're doing fabulously. I've been harvesting out of them. And I will do another video on that a little bit later. But the other thing that I'd like to do is I would like to grow some food indoors. Now, I ordered seeds for some tomatoes a while back. They're called Orange Hat, and they're from Baker Seeds. And they're supposed to be a very small tomato that's made for pots. And I'm going to see, maybe it's a little bit late in the year to get production. It's a 58-day from seed to harvest. So we'll see if we actually get production out of them. But I'm going to try that. I think next year I'm going to try planting the seeds for those in September. Keep them indoors in a pot and see what we can do. Last year I grew lettuce and kale indoors and harvested off of that, and it worked really well. So we'll see what we can do indoors. So that's another thing that I'm planning on doing in this grow room. Like I talked about behind me, the houseplants, I'm going to separate those out and start learning how to grow houseplants. We're going to plant some more citrus and keep those in pots. Those will go outdoors in the spring and summer when it's warm enough. And then also, I'm going to start learning more about propagating fruit trees. For my Rare Fruit Growers Facebook page, we're going to do a cutting and a scion exchange. We'll do several of those. I've got some people lined up to teach us about grafting. Those will not happen in this grow room. Those will happen outdoors, but we're going to be doing that. And I'll do videos on that. But also I want to learn how to grow plants from cuttings. So we're going to try a bit of that. I don't know how much of that we're going to do this winter. I do have my roselle that worked out really well. I have my maypops that are dying. We'll see what happens with those. I've got some pawpaw seeds in my refrigerator that we're stratifying. We'll talk more about that and see if we can get some of those to grow. And that's just what's going to be happening in my grow room this winter, and I'm really excited to learn all of it, and I hope you want to come along on these adventures. So thank you for watching this video. If you like it, please share it with your friends, like and subscribe, and go have a wonderful garden adventure.